HVAC 360 is brought to you today by Construction Cruise Lines. Need a vacation but afraid that you'll miss work? Well, come aboard to Construction Cruise Lines. Our fleet of vessels are just barely seaworthy as they're still under construction. On board, you'll enjoy the familiarity of Roach Coach themed buffet lines and drink orders that are constantly delayed and delivered wrong. Don't forget to pack your PPE. Construction Cruise Lines will be a getaway that you'll never forget. Hey, what's up? Welcome back. This is episode number 98, a two away from the big 100. Matt Nelson here, your host for HVAC 360, helping you go further and faster in the field of HVAC. How do we do that? Well, we talk about stories, interviews, and we share best practices. If these podcasts aren't enough, I implore you to go to my growing mailing list at HVAC360.com and become part of that community where I share stuff on a weekly basis like playing games, educational opportunities, and things like that. All right, so what's up for this week? This week, I want to talk about using new products in your design. I'm doing this in conjunction with I'm pulling the plug on one of my early episodes, episode number 5. That was on the Dolphin system, if you remember. And longtime listeners will remember that I also have a follow-up episode, kind of in a similar vein, episode number 35, and that was dealing with non-chemical water treatment devices. And that was with Dr. Janet Stout, who had done this very complicated and inclusive research project in actually analyzing the claims of these devices. And it was very, very compelling and something that really changed my mind about all this. And Dr. Janet Stout, just so you know, is a Legionella expert. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I implore you to go back to number 35, listen to that episode, because that was a good one. So, what happened? I mean, that was when I did the interview was back in 2010. I talked to 2012 when I talked to Dr. Stout, and in 2015, did a little research. Dolphin was actually bought out by Evapco, the cooling tower manufacturer. So it's still around. It's still in use, and I found it interesting because I did re-listen to the episode, and it still seems like a plausible solution to chemical, an alternative to chemical water treatment. However, I know that's not the case anymore. But I also found it interesting when I was listening to the episode that they found it, even back then, they found it necessary to pair this product with a water treatment professional for monitoring purposes. So it wasn't something, it was a very simple product. It seemed like you could just plug it in and let it go and have it do its thing. But you really you can't abdicate responsibility for your chemical water treatment. You could end up with growing Legionella in your cooling tower, and that's not the case. So they were very kind of very, very forward, saying that, hey, you know what, you're gonna still need to watch your system. You're gonna still need to drain it down. You still need to clean it. Just add our product on with it as well. So, this is one of the first products that I've ever used that I'm kind of had, sort of a designer's remorse, if that's actually a word. So designer's remorse on it. And I'm like, you know what? There are people out there that are still using this product. And if they don't have that proper monitoring, it could turn bad at some point in time. So you still have to be very diligent about using new products. So new product, I just wanted to talk about briefly to follow this up. How do you evaluate new products, that could be considered cutting edge or very, very different or not the standard? And I think the first thing that you have to do, you have to be able to say, who's the driver, who's really wanting this product. Is it the owner? Is it the head of your mechanical engineering department? Is it a manufacturer's rep that's saying, hey, this is a great new product? And you really, I guess the first thing that you want to be able to do once you identify who the driver is to really to find out why. Why do they want this? What's the benefit that they see that is going to be so great to be able to institute this on your project? Remember that if it's a manufacturer's rep pushing this product, that's their job. Their job is to make a compelling argument why you should include their products in your design. If it's the owner, maybe you need to educate the owner a little bit more. Maybe there's something that you can add to their knowledge base. Or is it something that, hey, you know what? Their people are coming back, their maintenance staff are coming back and saying, hey, it's so great because of X, Y, and Z. And maybe that's something that you need to kind of incorporate it into this, this vetting process. And maybe it's, if it's your department head, maybe it's, why do they want to use it? Maybe it's something that they really want to see if it works or not. But, frankly, you have to have the owner's best interest in mind. There are a lot of new bells and whistles out there that seem great, but for a lot of reasons just fall on their face, quite frankly. A couple other things that, when we talk about manufacturers' reps, sometimes when you find out about new products, it's the rep that's coming in there and talking about it to you. But if it's complicated or it's something that's new and they're still learning about it, typically what you're going to find is you're going to find the like somebody from the manufacturer themselves coming in with the rep and talking about it. I mean, that, not necessarily in and of itself, because it's a great opportunity to hear some expert wisdom. You can hear these, you'll have this in, when you're dealing with learning about pumps or fans or anything that's been around for a while, but especially when you're learning about a new product that's kind of fancy, if you have somebody from the manufacturer that's kind of required because the rep doesn't know too much, maybe that's a little red flag that you put up and you're like, okay, we're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it and understand why, for some other reasons. And again, I guess the last thing is, don't add things just blindly. Just don't add things because. So number 2, what's the benefit? I mean, that's once you find out who the driver is, what's the benefit that you can get from this product? I mean, is it significant? And I always default to the fact that, you want to keep it simple. Is there an ROI that an owner sees? Maybe that's why they like it. A return on investment. What do you want? Because you're going to have to ultimately weigh this against the pros and the cons. Number 3, on the con side, will maintenance staff understand it? There's been scenarios, and especially with this product, this chemical treatment Dolphin system, where the maintenance staff didn't understand it. They thought it was a bunch of hooey, and they just unplugged it. So that was something that, at the time, we're like, hey, you know what? You're going to have to even more closely monitor it. But here's something that we put in your system that we think has a benefit that you're kind of just, avoiding. And I think that's, especially when you're dealing with things that are a little bit more complicated, that's when the maintenance staff is going to kind of revert to what they know, the tried and true measure. I think a lot of maintenance staff don't necessarily have high regard for engineers. So a lot of times, especially when, they see examples of engineers doing, silly things and why do they design it this way? Don't they understand? So when they don't have faith in the engineer, then they're not going to, try to use, their effort to really understand and figure out what you've included. Another thing is, what about the installers? I mean, obviously somebody has to put this system together. This Dolphin system was rather simple to put in. It was just kind of, you put it in a pipe and you're done about it. But there are other systems out there that are very complicated when you're trying to, when it's the cutting edge of new technology. And the installers may not necessarily know how to set it up right. And you need to be honest with yourself. Also, you want to make sure that you're when you are incorporating into your design, you want to make sure that it's easy to maintain, that it's easy to repair or replace. Not only because if things go south, but if they don't go south, I mean, you still, these are some of the fundamental things of products that you used in design. But especially so in some of these, advanced products. Now, you want to weigh the con side. Number 4, we want to weigh the con side. What is the downside if this doesn't work, or in fact has to be removed? Is it something that, are you basing your entire, cooling system or heating system on this new product? That if it doesn't work, it's going to be a huge step backwards. Obviously, that's kind of a worst case scenario, and you really don't want to be put in a position where you're going there. But what happens if it does? Do you have to modify, if it's something small, like the Dolphin system, do you have to modify the piping or the duct work in some way to make sure that it's easily removable, or that it's not going to impact the system? Does the system have to be drained? What do you have to go through? Just a mental exercise. What do you have to go through to actually get this product out? Or do you just abandon it in place? And what does that cause over the life of a system? Is that some, negative, some system effect? Does it add pressure drop? There's a bunch of different things that you should be thinking about in going through this evaluation process. So, and obviously, one of the things, especially when you're talking with a rep, number 5, where is it being used now? And, do they have a knowledgeable support network? Is this something that, only the people from the manufacturer can troubleshoot for you? Or do you have some good local support and service techs out in your local area to be able to get to this product and help you out there? You need to be able to, contact where the different installations are. You should be doing this as part of your evaluation process. So you're like, okay, where is it being used? Is it being used locally? Or has this rep actually sold this product in your local area? If so, you need to be able to go to that different, owner or maintenance staff or engineer and talk about it. What's been their experience with this product? Has it been good? Has it been bad? Are there some lessons learned that you can share? What about the installing contractor? Is there something that you can talk to him about and figure out exactly what could be done better, in the next times installing this sort of stuff? Also, I think one more benefit, if it has been installed locally, you need to, there could be some regional differences. Especially products are applied to different projects for different reasons. So if you're looking to save water and you're in the Southwest, the dry, humid, or the desert Southwest, so to speak, of the United States, water conservation is a big thing. It's extremely important. It may be less in the northeastern United States, but it's still something that is going to play into the ROI factor, the importance factor in your decision. So there's some regional differences, but if you can find somebody locally, you can understand why they selected and maybe see their pros and cons list to be able to evaluate it. Is this something that you need? Number 6, is there something that is it so complicated? Is it something that you need some extra consultant support? It's not unheard of to have something that you may not necessarily be familiar with. And if it's something that, the owner wants to use and they're really, really enthusiastic and they're really adamant about using a certain product, maybe you need to bring in a consultant that knows a lot about the product, that's, has designed it, has used it, has installed it, above and beyond the manufacturer's rep or the manufacturer. Maybe it's some other engineering firm. Maybe it's a specialty consultant. Is that something that you need to reach out to and figure out and maybe add to your team to be able to do this safely without minimizing risk, because that's the whole point of this, is you want to minimize your risk, minimize your exposure if things can go wrong. Other things you can do is take a look at your ASHRAE resources. If you belong to ASHRAE, you maybe look up who's the expert in this particular area and take a look and contact them. Maybe work with other engineers, or definitely look into your existing network. Even bounce the idea off other engineers. Talk to them. Say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about adding this product to my design. What do you think? What would you do in this situation? And that kind of gives you an additional sounding board, so you're not like all alone in making this decision and in this evaluation. So, number 7, why use anything new at all? And I think my answer to that. Ultimately, you're going to need to evaluate new products. You're going to need this skill to be able to do that. And without getting into the habit of evaluating new products, you won't be able to stay relevant in the design community. You'll be doing the same thing that you've always been doing for the past couple decades, and that just won't. That doesn't make you very marketable. That doesn't bring value to you. And realize that we're talking about new cutting edge products now. But is there something that you use on a daily basis that you haven't evaluated in quite a long time? There might be something new in pumps or in fans or in temperature controls. Is there something that you're not staying relevant in that you need to go through and evaluate whether or not this product can be done better, installed better, more pros and cons? Is there something just slightly different? Rarely do we find a case where there's something brand spanking new in the field of HVAC. That's a rarity, but there are subtle improvements, on products, that it's getting better to do this, or it's more efficient to do this. And I think that's where you need to kind of step up and keep that in the back of your mind. And you might need to reevaluate existing products, even on a regular basis. And number 8, the last step, make sure you document this journey that you've done, your vetting process. Share it internally. A lot of times you go through this, and if it's just a bunch of conversations that you've had and you didn't write anything down, you're going to have to rely on your memory to bring that all up, and it might get fuzzy over a long time. Maybe you can share it with somebody who's, hey, another engineer in your firm. Hey, I'm thinking about using this product. What do you think? And you can kind of say, well, here's my notes that I took evaluating this product. And if you write it down, the best thing about that is that if you write it down, you can always edit it and modify it as you gain more information. It can be just sort of a living document. A lot of the commissioning guys out there will understand a living document that you just update, add things as they go along. So it's very relevant. And even, the best way to kind of share this too is to, share it internally with your firm, or maybe even with an ASHRAE chapter that you're like, hey, this is what I did. This is what I evaluated, and here's what I come up with. So that might be something that would be relevant that other people might have interest in doing. All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for your time. I really do greatly appreciate it. I hope this was helpful. If you're not a subscriber, again, consider subscribing to at HVAC360.com to the mailing list for weekly goodies. And if you would leave me some feedback, you can do that on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. I'll give you a shout out if you actually go through the effort of doing that. I really do appreciate that, and that helps out the podcast quite a bit. Well, that's a wrap for this week of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson, helping you go further and faster in the field of HVAC. And as always, know what you build and share what you know.